Welcome back. It's time to talk about everybody's favorite subject, eating. Just mine? It's obviously extremely important for, day-to-day life, but may look a little different when you're backpacking. For starters, you're gonna burn a lot more calories than you think when you're spending 6 or more hours a day hiking with a heavy load on your back, even if you're not tackling a lot of elevation gain. So what you eat on the trail and how much you eat is extremely important. In fact, we'll put a hiking calorie calculator in the lesson text to help you figure out how much you will need to eat based on your trip and your body type. But assume you'll need something around 3,000 calories a day for starters. So let's start with what we like to eat on the trail. On any given trip, I'll bring vegan jerky, fruit leather, tortillas with peanut butter, Cliff bars or other plant-based protein bars, ginger chews, oatmeal granola, instant rice, hummus mix, noodles, etc. For lunch, I like to stick with things that are quick and easy, like peanut butter and jelly tortillas or sandwiches, rehydrated hummus, fruit leather or protein bars, and snacks like vegan jerky or trail mix. Stuff that doesn't require cooking and I can easily grab and go when I find a good spot to sit and rest. Other great snacks and lunch items include olives, fresh fruit. Remember that you'll have to pack out all those peels and cores. Chocolate if it's not going to be too hot. Energy cookies and high protein desserts like Larry and Lenny's plant-based protein cookies. And untapped maple energy waffles. I'll bring dried hummus and refried beans and chips. You name it. The lighter and more calorie dense it is, the better. For breakfast, I like to take a few minutes to make coffee, preferably with some packable vegan creamer, plus oatmeal with granola and dried fruit. It only takes a few minutes to make, and that means I can hit the trail early if I want to. For dinner, however, there's plenty of time to sit and cook a warm meal, which is nice, especially when it's chilly outside. Of course, if it's too hot to cook, or you don't want to bring a stove with you, you can prepare a meal by cold soaking things like noodles or quinoa with dried veggies for a few hours before dinner time. That said, there's nothing quite like a warm cup of tea or cocoa and a hot bowl of ramen at the end of a long day of hiking. In either case, we often make our own backpacking meals out of some sort of dried noodles or instant grains like rice, ramen noodles, rice noodles, even quinoa or chickpea pasta, none of which take that long to cook. Then we add ingredients like vegan textured vegetable protein, or TVP, freeze-dried vegetables, and various seasonings to craft everything from peanut noodles to curry to vegan Alfredo. We'll include a link to our favorite vegan backpacking recipes below, but you can also buy pre-made meals that are quick and easy and only require adding hot water, such as instant dried soup, backpacking meals that you can buy at a local outdoor store, or straight up cup of noodles type stuff. Though if we're gonna buy a pre-made meal, we like to go with something really delicious and sustainable, like a vegan meal from Food for the Soul. That brand makes some of our favorite backpacking meals, and they even offer them in bulk compostable packaging to reduce waste. Rad, right? Whatever you choose, just make sure that what you're eating contains enough calories. I like to bring an extra squeeze bottle of cooking oil or nut butter to add a little fat to things, which is the fastest way to up the calorie content of a meal. But let's talk about the actual act of cooking, because if you are planning to enjoy a warm meal, you're gonna have to have a stove on which to prepare it. You can, of course, cook over a fire if fires are allowed in the region where you're backpacking, but that can often take a gruelingly long time, especially at the end of the day when you're hungry and tired. So most backpackers who want to enjoy a hot meal or beverage pack a stove. There are many backpacking stoves to choose from, including alcohol stoves, tablet stoves, canister stoves, and liquid fuel stoves. But canister stoves are by far the most popular and readily available. You've probably seen them if you've walked into any outdoor store. They're usually small, lightweight, foldable apparatuses that fit in the palm of your hand and attach to a canister of isopro fuel. In most temperatures and instances, canister stoves, which include jet boil systems, are the most reliable and easy to use on the market, which is why they're so popular. Their only downsides, the canisters do tend to be a bit heavy if you like to pack ultra light, and in temperatures lower than about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, a canister stove won't burn efficiently, if it even lights at all. So if you're winter camping, that may not be the best option. But for everything else, it's kind of the standard. It boils water quickly and provides even, consistent heat. I mean, there's a reason it's most backpackers' first and only backpacking stove. That's what we often use when we're backpacking, because boiling water and adding it to dried ingredients and letting those ingredients sit for 10 or 15 minutes is how we cook almost all of our meals in the backcountry. So for ease of use and efficiency, canister stoves can't be beat. Cooking this way, often referred to as freezer bag cooking, offers a way to prepare a meal that doesn't use as much fuel as if I were, say, boiling and simmering or sauteing dinner in a pan on a stovetop. Though I will say that we no longer recommend cooking directly in a zip-top freezer bag. Not only is it wasteful, they aren't designed to contain hot liquids. Instead, dump your ingredients into your pot after your water is done boiling, or pour it all into a reusable bowl with a lid to cook it all up. As for other types of stoves, we'll put a link to a bonus video comparing the main types in more detail below, but the alternatives include liquid fuel stoves, alcohol stoves, tablet stoves, and wood-burning stoves. Some weigh less than others, some are designed for use in colder temperatures or at high altitudes, and some take more patience, but they also have their place. So check out that video for a full breakdown. We've used all of them, though as I said, I prefer a canister stove when backpacking with Josh or others, but one of the more ultra-light options like an alcohol stove when I'm solo backpacking in order to reduce the amount of weight in my pack. Plus, if it's just me, there's less water to boil, so there's less rush, and I'm happy to wait a few extra minutes in order to shave a few ounces. As for cooking equipment like pots and pans, there are literally dozens of varieties available. When Josh and I backpack together, we bring a GSI Pinnacle Duelist set. It's just a couple of bowls and a pot, plus folding sporks. And it all nests together with our backpacking stove in order to create a nice tidy package. We also bring ultralight mugs for hot beverages. And that's it, because our cooking style in the backcountry strictly involves rehydrating. Because frankly, that method is lighter, easier, and doesn't require as much cleanup. When I'm on a solo trip, however, I sometimes opt for something a little smaller, namely an ultralight one-person pot and mug, possibly made of titanium or aluminum. No bowl, because I'll eat right out of the pot. I could cut weight even more by eliminating the mug. I have friends who do, but I like to sip my coffee in the mornings while I make breakfast, or enjoy my tea or hot cocoa in the evenings while I wait for dinner to rehydrate. So I bring both, a pot and a mug. When you're choosing a cook set, you don't need much. Something minimalist and lightweight will do. Depending on what you are planning to eat, you'll probably only need one bowl. What that bowl is made of is totally up to you. There are plenty of options to choose from. For example, for several years, we just carried an ultralight kettle and 2 bowls. But we like the nesting set we have now, which reduces the amount of space our cook set takes up in our packs. But there are pots of all shapes, sizes, and weights, as well as plates and bowls. You can get silicone dinnerware that collapses flat, rigid plastic bowls, which are nice for not burning your hands, and metal bowls made of aluminum or titanium. You do just have to be a little more careful with those, because when you pour hot liquids into them, they can be extremely hot to the touch, so watch your fingers. But let's touch on doing dishes in the backcountry real quick, because there are a lot of misconceptions. For starters, not all soap is biodegradable, and biodegradable soap doesn't biodegrade in water. So choose your soap wisely and never do your dishes in a pond, creek, river, etc. When you do wash dishes or wash your hands, do so at least 100 feet away from camp and 200 feet away from any natural water sources. I often bring a very small bottle of Castile soap if we're going to be doing dishes in the wilderness. Just make sure to scatter the dirty water 100 to 200 feet away from camp. If you have any leftovers, pack them out. Or bring along a buddy who can act as a human garbage disposal. Either way, never dispose of leftover food in the backcountry. That includes burning it. Just don't do it. When brushing your teeth after a meal, spit at least 50 feet from camp. Farther, if you're in grizzly territory, and imagine the kind of spitting you see in the movies when someone has water in their mouth and then gets surprised, as in put some water in your mouth, swish, then spit so you're distributing a fine mist of watered down toothpaste over a large area. You know the kind of spitting I'm talking about. You know. Leftovers or no, what should you do with food after you're done eating and before you go to bed? In most backpacking circumstances, you should prepare a bear hang for all of your food and smellables. And I do mean all of your food and smellables. That includes lip balm, sunscreen, deodorant, toothpaste, empty protein bar wrappers, anything that has a scent, even if you don't think it's that strong. Remember that animals' sense of smell is a whole lot stronger than ours. There are certain circumstances, of course, when a bear hang isn't entirely necessary. Sometimes I won't use one in winter when bears are hibernating and in areas of the country where bears are practically non-existent. But there are likely other mischievous creatures that wouldn't mind sneaking into your food bag for a free snack. So a bear hang is never a bad idea. To do one, place all of your food and smelly items in a stuffed sack and seal it shut. Tie it securely with a piece of paracord or rope so that it can be held aloft without falling down or popping open. And make sure that length of paracord is at least 20 feet long because you're gonna have to hang the bag at least 10 feet above the ground. Listen, bears are taller than you think when they stand on their hind legs, okay? After you've tied the bag securely, toss the loose end of the cord over a strong, healthy tree branch. Keyword being strong and healthy. Make sure that the cord is hanging over the branch at least 6 feet away from the trunk of the tree. Then gently pull the loose end of the cord until your bear bag is hanging at least 10 feet in the air. Tie the loose end of your cord around the tree trunk to secure its airborne position, and you're done. Hang your bag at least 100 feet away from where you've pitched your tent. In grizzly territory, you'll also want to eat and do dishes at least 100 feet away from where you pitch your tent. In these areas, you should also do a bear hang anytime you are planning on leaving camp for more than about 30 seconds. Listen, I've heard tales firsthand about people wandering down the trail just to refill their water and come back to a bear in their campsite rooting through their tent. I'm just saying, true story. It happens. So err on the side of caution and always hang your food when you leave camp or take it with you. Alternatively, and this is a better option if you're in grizzly country, sometimes even required, use a bear safe or bear canister. They are often heavy and bulky, but when tied to a tree trunk with all of your food, are the best way to protect it from determined and powerful animals and ensure you still have food that's not smashed to pieces or eaten if a bear does wander by and gets curious. But we'll talk more about animals and animal safety in a few lessons. For now, that's how to eat well on the trail. So stay full and focused out there and wander on. I don't know about these bear bags though, with like say they're like chew proof, you know, like, oh, bear teeth and claws can't get through them, so your food's protected. They're still gonna be smashed. You're not gonna have any food left. It's all gonna be crumbs. I wouldn't get one of those. That's my opinion. There you have it.